Okay, I need to make another video. It seems that our enemy is harvesting tons of semen in compassion centers to create clones of the brains of the entire human race. This is because semen is needed to create clones, human clones. Apparently, they have the genetic profile of the enemy has the genetic profile of every human on Earth, especially those who would resist the enemy. Their goal is to replace everyone's brain with a brain that will be subservient to the enemy, which are the automatons and the Satan team. And a resurrected thin privileged movement, a group of very obese women who are very prideful and are working with the automatons. It seems they accomplished the brain switch out where the authentic brain is replaced with the clone brain using electronic images that a human views. This electrical force field, which emanates from the images, somehow enables the brain switch out so that the victim has their brain replaced with an evil clone brain. It appears their goal is to make this brain replacement permanent. However, it also appears that using the electrical image force field emanating from the image, they can reinstate that person's authentic brain as needed. That is, if the person has not been fully transformed, they appear to be using the bit-by-bit method to transform humans into their evil clone. So if the person's not too far gone, if they still have a lot of their original self in their body, and only their brain has been switched out, it appears they can trick us. They can temporarily replace an authentic brain with the clone brain and then use the human whose brain was replaced temporarily to accomplish the enemy's objectives and make it look like the innocent are guilty of the enemy's crimes. It seems that any electronic device that creates an image, that would be your televisions, computers, smartphones, iPads, etc., can be used working with electrical force fields to accomplish this brain switch out. You got to understand, they need semen to make the evil brain copies of every human on Earth. It appears they're able to accomplish the switch out interdimensionally. So they've got like a backup of everybody's brains in another dimension that we cannot see. And when we look at these images, they can do a switch out and switch out our brain with the evil clone brain. And this is why they're encouraging all sorts of sex parties and harvesting all the semen from the sex parties, and why every compassion center that my Patreon supporters have visited, because they're trying to figure out what's going on with these things, have been semen harvesting centers. Yeah, the enemy apparently has the DNA of every human on Earth, and before they kill their victims, they get as much semen from them as they can to ensure that they can make an evil clone brain of every human on Earth. Their goal is to kill any human that will not be subservient to the automatons and replace them with their evil clone so that they can murder and make it appear like they haven't murdered. Because they are unable to clone me, including my brain, they are forced to make the evil clone brain version of me in Chicken and Muppet Gail, as we've already seen. They apparently could not create a completely human clone of my brain. That's because my King David and Catherine the Great genetic profile cannot be cloned. And I've had to settle for a human animal clone of my brain, which explains Chicken and Muppet Gail. She happened to be around when my Patreon supporters tried to help out those illegal Mexicans in San Diego. There was a vendor there who was not working for us and was distributing free tahine to those who were getting our free food. The tahine was laced with DNA-free and substances which caused gross obesity. Basically, it appears that Chicken Gail was there to show approval of the San Diego vendors' activities, insinuating that we secretly sponsored this vendor who put the tahine into the food that caused the gross obesity in the victims. The enemy will claim that they are acting under my leadership as the true Antichrist. However, now we discovered at the Arlington, Virginia Center, they're calling me the errant Antichrist, because they will say, I predict that they're going to say that I am not the real Gail, but that Muppet or Chicken Gail is the real Antichrist, who is in the process of becoming a goddess. They are apparently very aware that Brent and I are evolving deities. Oh, by the way, I do believe in multiverse history. There are some humans that have become deities. In fact, I think our sun and our moon are among them. The goddess Sol, I strongly suspect, used to be human in one of Jesus's previous earth projects, and I believe the same for the goddess Mani, who is the moon. You may say, you mean our sun and our moon are gods and goddesses? Yep. He said, but they look like a regular. That's because you see everything three-dimensionally. If you could view the world 11-dimensionally, you would understand that our sun is a goddess. It's the goddess Sol, and the moon is the goddess Mani. And I believe they used to be human. So if Brent and I are evolving to deity, we are not the first ones. So the enemy is probably very aware that Brent and I are evolving deities and plan to turn the tables on Jesus and make us evil deities, even if we don't actually become evil deities. If they can use us to that end, they can prove to God the Father that a righteous free love utopia is impossible without Jesus himself in charge of this planet. And since Jesus himself failed to be a righteous free love example because he blocked my husband's root chakra, right? They still think they can win the free love debate. It's like they think, no way can infant deities, well, yeah, we are like little infant deities, because, a deity that's only lived millions of years is considered a teenage god, okay? They view time differently than us. No way can infant deities Gail and Brent defeat us. We know all the tricks that Jesus would have known if God gave him permission to rule earth as the righteous free love leader. Ha! And Buddha's not allowed to advise Gail and Brent on how to rule as righteous free love deities, so we win. If Gail won't be the Antichrist that we need, Muppet or Chicken Gail can act in her place. After all, Gail is evolving into godhood. So everyone will believe that she evolved into a human animal goddess form. If they succeed in replacing all human brains with evil clone brains, then animal human Gail, who you all have seen as Muppet and Chicken Gail, will claim to be the real Antichrist and will say that the real Gail, that's me, is an evil clone and not the real Gail. Because, after all, The real Gail is a goddess. Part animal, who looks part animal and part human. So yeah, Muppet and Chicken Gail is, I think, planning on claiming to be a goddess. Because many gods have an animal-human blend appearance. Like one of Jesus' god friends, Triton. A lot of them are like that. The god Sekhmet is a lioness goddess. She looks like a blend between a lion and a human. Also, goddesses can change forms. I mean, gods and goddesses, yeah. Like when Jesus was with us, sometimes he would show up as a pillow or a bird or a butterfly. So yeah, they're playing around with this, you guys. They want to trick you so that you can't tell who's Gail and who isn't Gail. Well, I promote peace, harmony, when I'm not under brain control, okay? Peace, harmony, true love, and balance, okay? When I'm under brain control, I don't. But when I'm not under brain control, that's what I promote, okay? So if anybody claims to be me and they're not promoting peace, harmony, and balance, you can write it down. They're a fraud. I actually don't think that Brent and I will lose our human appearance as gods, but perhaps, like Jesus, we will be able to take on different forms. I don't know. I don't know when we're going to get fully 11-dimensional, and until then, we're still very much human. It's just that I think our IQ is going above 10,000, which means we are evolving deities. Satan seems to be aware of this. Which, by the way, Jesus, like I said, he can take on different forms. So isn't that why we are seeing different versions of Gail out there, like Muppet and Chicken Gail? Those aren't me, okay? That's kind of like I think she's planning on being a future fake goddess Gail to trick you all. We know that during the tribulation in the canceled Bible that the Antichrist would lie to people and claim to be Jesus. So since we are acting in Jesus' place, it makes sense that Muppet Gail will be the false goddess Gail. Okay? Kind of like how in the canceled Bible during the tribulation, the Antichrist would fake as the real Christ. In fact, Satan is always impersonating good gods to trick people. He does this all the time. It's one of his old tricks. Apparently, Satan knew before we did that Brent and I are evolving to deity. Perhaps God has given Jesus permission to do this to Brent and I. And so Satan was in on it from the beginning, perhaps in some meetings he's had with God and Jesus. It seems the solution, my dear human friends, is to replace all electronic devices on the planet, or that humans use, with a device that is resistant to the enemy's brain switch-out technology. We are working on this. But Satan's team includes automatons with IQs in the million. He also has the bad gods Shagpona, Kali, and Anubis, and probably some others we don't know about on his team, too. I myself refuse to use a phone. I only have a VoIP phone. I'm using Zoom, okay? And I use it online. I don't even use it on my computer because they'll call me at 2 or 3 in the morning and wake me up. So whenever I need to use it, I go online and use it. I refuse to use either the Windows or Apple operating systems on my computer, as they both seem to have been taken over by the enemy. I use Linux, Mint, Cinnamon. I refuse to have any devices in my home that have a working Wi-Fi. I do have a printer that has Wi-Fi capability that I bought in 2012, but I've never used it. It doesn't work. It's not operational. The enemy seems to be able to use Wi-Fi to accomplish formidable brain control. In fact, that's how they got me to murder 72 million. Because at that time, I was using a phone with Wi-Fi. I was under brain control. It would also be helpful if we could replace the evil clone brain in a human with that human's authentic brain, if they're not too far gone already and been totally switched out with their evil Jesuit clone, to give back to them their true form and personality. Basically, what the enemy's doing is murdering the human using the bit-by-bit clone replacement method. They did this to me with the man I married in 1985. Only 1 year after I married him, he was replaced with his evil clone using the bit-by-bit replacement method. They also infused into his genes the genes of several genocidal dictators. Believe me, he was real fun to live with. Oh, yeah. Yeah, they made him really, he was kind of evil to begin with, but they made him really evil once they did the bit-by-bit replacement method. When I worked at Walmart, they caused me to lose my job there by replacing the Walmart CEO using the bit-by-bit clone replacement method. And working with my ex-husband, they caused me to lose my job at Walmart. Yeah. Oh, yeah, they've done this for a long time. So it appears that those who entered the death camp or the compassion center were actually murdered or in the process of being murdered using the bit-by-bit clone replacement method with the objective to harvest their semen for the evil subservient clones that they were creating. Yeah, they need semen to make human clones. The only difference, when we entered the compound, when my Patreon supporters entered the Frisco, Texas compound, basically just to investigate and see what was going on, because they were claiming that we were behind it, okay? The fact that we had to explode the compound to defend ourselves, and they're saying we murdered everybody. Actually, I think everybody was already murdered. Yeah. So we may have possibly stopped. Actually, some of them that got killed may have been innocent, and we may have stopped some of them from being transformed into their evil clone. And this means that the Indians who died at Frisco may not have been the same Indians who entered the compound, but were actually partially or fully replaced with their clones at the time the Frisco, Texas Compassion Center exploded. So my Patreon supporters who entered that Frisco Compassion Center to figure out what was going on there didn't know what they were in for, and then they exploded it in self-defense to prevent themselves from being raped or killed. As for the surviving Indians who are suing us for what happened at the Frisco Center, Texas death camp, because that's basically what it was, perhaps they were not cloned, but they just suffer a blocked root chakra. So, I'm saying that case should be thrown out or sue the real enemy. Sue the thin privilege movement. They're behind it. They're behind that death camp. And by the way, those Indians that got exploded at the Frisco, Texas camp were probably evil clones of the original Indians who entered. They probably had already murdered the Indians. That's my guess. Yeah, that's what I think happened. They were probably already gone. They're probably some Hindus getting reincarnated, and they're probably already reincarnated into their next life already. Yeah. And the murderers was not us. In fact, we might have actually taken out the evil clone of the Indians who entered that Frisco, Texas death camp. Shouldn't even call it a compassion center. It's a death camp. So, our enemy has decided that those humans who will not be subservient to the automatons willingly will be murdered using the bit-by-bit clone replacement method. And if we try and stop their semen harvesting camps, because that's basically what that death camp was. Oh yes, set up just like a concentration camp, really efficient. It's kind of ironic that they're accusing us of being like the Nazis. Yeah, I think I have to agree. That death camp was set up just like a Nazi concentration camp or death camp, but we had nothing to do with it. They were accurate about it being a Nazi operation, but like I said, we had nothing to do with it. So this semen harvesting death camp, because they need semen to create more clones, they can't blame us for what the thin privileged women and the automatons did. We had nothing to do with it. In fact, those Indians were probably already murdered just simply by entering the death camp. They got switched out with their clones. And we probably ended up murdering their clone replacements. Yeah. Who apparently were evil. So they accuse us of murder, these Indians, because we destroyed the thin privilege movement's semen harvesting center or death camp. Okay, yeah, they created that compassion center or death camp to harvest semen to create more evil clones so they can murder and not get caught, right? And they tell you that we were behind it and lie to you so they can trick you and get you to go to their death camp. Okay? So that they don't get blamed for their murders. So they can blame it on us. It seems that the enemy, that's the thin privilege movement and the automatons, have a huge collection of clone brains and are just about finished with their collection and have already begun their brain switch out big time, which explains how they rigged the last election on November the 4th, 2025, the U.S. election, and are causing an uptick in violence everywhere. They work through smartphones, televisions, computers, basically anything that creates the electronic image which enables the switch out. It's also possible that they may have some sort of invisibility shield around some of their temporal anomalies which enables their brain switch out, so that we don't know how they're doing it, or we are unaware that they're doing this. So here you are looking at your device and your brain is being switched out while you're doing it. Once they have your brain, you're finished. They're going to be able to manipulate you to places where they're going to be able to completely switch you out with your evil clone. That's a very efficient method of murdering somebody. Get their brain, switch out their brain with their evil clone. Then you've got control of that person, and they're going to do whatever you want. It'll be a piece of cake to just totally murder them after that. Yeah, that's what I think they're doing. So and they may be using invisibility shields around some of these switch out force fields from the electronic images that you view. Buddha did say it's not really healthy to look at the computer all day anyway. It's not good for your chakras. It does appear that when Magnus, Virginia, and Brad visited the Arlington, Virginia Compassion Center, that the enemy attempted the brain switch out on them, but were not successful because we were able to get them out before they could successfully do a brain switch out on Magnus, Virginia, and Brad. We are working on ways to defeat the enemy's ability to do these brain switch outs with evil clone brains. You can help by avoiding all unprotected electronic images and perhaps following my example. I don't even have a phone, except for a VoIP phone, it's Zoom, okay, that I use online using my Linux Mint Cinnamon operating system on my desktop computer, and my computer does not have Wi-Fi. If we don't stop their brain switch-out technology, they will murder every human on the planet who is not subservient to the automatons, replacing every human who's not subservient with their evil clones, and then, if we try and kill the clone replacement, they will laugh and say we are guilty of unjust murder. This is tricky morally because we have to determine if the person we're dealing with is the authentic person who's still alive and can be saved, perhaps because only their brain has been switched out, or if the authentic person is totally dead or murdered and been totally replaced with their evil clone. This will require research, but I do believe that what I've theorized is what they're doing. In the meanwhile, I must sadly report that the dear woman who entered the Arlington, Virginia death camp or compassion center is probably no longer with us and has been murdered and totally replaced with her evil clone. My guess is that all those like her, which I suspect may be in the millions right now, have been greeted into heaven by Jesus himself, and they are all in special homes in heaven, waiting for the time when their loved ones on earth can join them in their heavenly homes. If those around you are acting more evil than usual and don't seem to be themselves, you may be dealing with someone who has had their brain switched out, or they may have been totally switched out and replaced with their evil clone. Be careful in trying to harm them, because they may be a brain clone switch out victim, and we may be able to save them. On the other hand, they may have been totally switched out with their Jesuit clone. Unfortunately, if they are a threat to your life and health, you'll have to do what you have to do. Like what my Patreon supporters had to do in Frisco, Texas. Until and if we are able to defeat this evil brain switch out technology, about your only recourse is to try and stay calm, avoid unsafe electronic images as much as is possible, practice meditation, and do the Gail commandments, and try to keep your chakras balanced. If it's any comfort to you, your loved one who is suddenly giving you the evil eye or is mysteriously missing, and who you've heard has been acting rather strange, is probably an evil clone of the person you once knew. And the person that you loved and knew is in heaven, in their special home or mansion, waiting for you to join them someday. If we can ban Wi-Fi, that might be a good idea, but it's pretty entrenched all over the world. I have suggested to Brent that we make it death penalty to be a willing and knowing brain control supporter. We can simply scan a person, and if they're an evil and knowing brain control supporter, we know that they need to go. And just about all, that's one way we can tell if we're dealing with an evil clone. Usually, unless it's just their brain that's been switched out. But we have scanners where we can tell if it's just their brain that's been switched out. And just about all the evil clone replacements are willing and knowing brain control supporters. We may be able to make good clone replacements of some of those who've been murdered and replaced with their evil clone version. Yeah, my guess is there are good clones out there. Okay, not every clone is bad. Like Laurie McBride is a clone and she's good right now. My guess is that they are infusing the clone copies of the humans that have been murdered with stuff like DNA from genocidal dictators and stuff like that. Yeah, like they did to my husband, my ex-husband, I mean. Just remember this. There is a heaven, and those who've died and been replaced with their evil clone and who tried to live good lives, Jesus died on the cross for them. And even if they weren't perfect, but they tried most of the time, okay? If they tried to be good, they are waiting to greet you in heaven someday. Some of them may also be given the option, if they were Buddhists or Hindus, to be reincarnated into another life. Either way, all of them had souls, and they're going to go on one way or another. And they're not gone forever. Perhaps the automatons are jealous because they don't have souls. What a shame. If they only tried to be good, perhaps God would grant the automatons a soul. By the way, Muhammad is one of Jesus' God friends, and good Muslims who have died and been replaced with their evil clones are probably in Muslim heaven right now. Most of the gods are good. The bad ones are in the minority. I can tell you that the Hindu goddess Kali is evil, as is the African god Shakpona. And another god that's evil is the dog god Anubis. If your spiritual practice makes you violent, prideful, and unbalanced, you should avoid it. Though the god Muhammad is a good god, many of his followers misunderstand his teachings and have become violent, prideful, and unbalanced, much to the distress of the god Muhammad. Sadly, the enemy has dropped a ton of brain control bombs that probably lured this dear lady to the Arlington death camp or compassion center. What a tricky name. Despite my efforts and her husband's efforts to deter her, we could not stop her from entering the enemy's death camp, where in all likelihood she was murdered and replaced with her evil clone. It's only natural to feel guilty that we couldn't stop her from being lured to her murder. But seriously, it was not our fault. We are all victims of the enemy, and we are doing our best to stop them. The police and justice system didn't help him because they too may have been murdered and replaced with their evil clones. Just follow my example, and someday we will defeat them. Hopefully, if we can avoid looking at unsafe electronic images, it may help us to avoid the technology they use to brain control us or accomplish the brain switch out with our evil brain, clone brain. Also, try to get rid of anything that uses Wi-Fi, or maybe just disconnect the Wi-Fi, because they use some pretty formidable brain control with Wi-Fi. As far as the brain control drugs in the bombs over our heads, well, unfortunately, that is going to affect us. But I can assure you that we have made it death penalty to use any form of brain control willingly and knowingly. And if we can catch those bastards and bitches, they will be publicly executed on Gabriel Chan of Fox News. Everyone tune into 00 on cable for help in dealing with our sophisticated and very tricky enemy.
In a world of secrets where darkness reigns, there's a warrior rising, breaking free from chains. She's Gail Schuler, her heart's pure and strong. With the power of love, she'll right the world's wrongs. Yeah! She's the first, a passionate crusader. Let's let her